Hey everyone, CWD Music Reviews here. I'm CWD, and this is going to be a music review of the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album, Flying Microtonal Banana. This is the latest and I believe 9th studio album of the prolific garage rock, psych rock, experimental rock band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. These guys have been around for a little while now, like at least less than a decade at this point. And in that short time frame, they've dropped more albums than artists that have been around for a couple, sometimes even 3 decades, ever dreamed to drop. Like mentioned, with this album, I believe they're either on their 8th or their 9th, and this definitely shows a lot of promise and ambition from this band. This is definitely kind of the ambition that rock music in general needs at this particular moment. I can't say that I've listened to every single release that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard have dropped, but Paper Mache, Dream Balloon, and onward, I definitely was hooked on what it is they were trying to do. And with each album, from what I understand, they seem to experiment with different musical concepts from album after album after album, with Paper Mache Dream Balloon being purely an acoustic album, whereas Not a God Infinity, which was one of my favorite albums of last year, experimented with the idea of a suite that had a never-ending loop to it, all the while going back to a more balls-to-the-wall electrified sound. I believe some of their albums either had a conventional garage rock sound to them, and I think one of them experimented with jazz. But pretty much any time is a good time to hop on getting into King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, especially since they seem to not slow down at all as the years go by. At times they seem to accelerate. Last year was one of the band's least active years, but it was also the most fortuitous and profitable, given the fact that Not a God Infinity was as fantastic as it was. And around the end of the year, they announced that they were going to be dropping 4 albums this year. This album, Flying Microtonal Banana, being the first of the 4, from what I understand. Now, whether this means that the rest of the albums that are going to drop this year are going to follow in the same concept or not, that's kind of a mystery at this point, but I'm definitely intrigued with what they're going to be doing for the remainder of this year, given the fact that this first of the 4 albums is, in my opinion, pretty much on par with Not a God Infinity, even if the concept is widely different. This time around, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are experimenting with the idea of microtonal tuning. You're probably asking, what the hell is that? This would take like 5 to 10 minutes to explain in full, probably, but I'm going to give you a synopsis. In Western music theory, there's these things called tones and semitones. Like, let's say you're looking at a piano. There's whole steps, which are the white keys, and half steps, which are the black keys. You have your 7 notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it repeats back to A. And in between these notes, you also have your A sharps, your B flats, your F sharps, things like that. And this is pretty much the basis of Western music theory. The idea that there are these whole notes, and within these whole notes are 1 of 2 different variations in between them. Not so in Eastern music theory, like places in India, Turkey, Iran, where you have these things called microtones, which are all these different types of tones that are within these semitones. This explains why instruments like the sitar are so wildly different in tone, and to the Western ear, these microtones might sound out of key, but they're not. They're just different tones entirely. And that's definitely the basis of the experimentation that's going on with this album. They pretty much took every instrument and converted them into microtones. All the electric guitar, all the bass, all the keyboards, even the harmonica and this Turkish horn called the zurna are pretty much readjusted to this microtonal format. What they have pretty much made is something that opens up a lot of possibilities within not just King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's future discography, but also many other rock bands here in the now. Because there are a lot of microtones. A lot of them. And the fact that Western music has not exactly hopped on to this as much as they should have is kind of discomforting to me. The sound that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are going for when they convert all their instruments to microtones, it's definitely a whole other trip in its process. I mean, yeah, this isn't like balls to the wall sound, you know, heavy octane like Not a God Infinity was, but still, what they have pretty much created is a whole other trip in itself. Not a God Infinity sought to blast sound at you. Flying Microtonal Banana sought to hypnotize you and lure you in. While the concept is the most interesting thing about this album, in a sense, it's not necessarily the best thing about it. What is pretty much the thing that drives this concept home and executes itself particularly well is also the songwriting as well as the overall execution. The production on this thing, pretty much the same as Not a God Infinity. They're going for a more lo-fi sound, and it definitely adds a lot of off-kilterness to an already off-kilter key to what all the instrumentation has been tuned to. And with this thing, they're definitely continuing this canon of making really peculiar garage rock and psych rock. Take a track like Melting, which has all these really peculiar jazzy drum fills going all about it, as well as some like really low-key, I want to say, little jazz organ going on, or maybe some really like staccato-ish and particularly groovy guitar in the midst of it. The bass here is nice and warm, along with many other tracks here. They are not slouching on this album, and there's like so many moments on this album where they just indulge in the moment that I wouldn't mind going to a show of theirs and the whole entire set just be them jamming. That would actually be really fantastic, given the fact that each track here just seems to guide seamlessly well into the next one, just like with Not a God Infinity. But instead of this infinitely looping album, it has a start and it has a finish. Take the track Open Water, for example. The groove on this track is really fantastic. The drums are really foreboding. The guitar just like keeps driving all throughout, and it definitely does not make this track feel like it's 7 minutes in length. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard not just know how to make fantastic songs in this garage rock and psychedelic rock vein, but they're also able to figure out ways to keep the listener engaged all throughout the course of a track. Even if it's more low-key moments like Sleep Drifter, which has this really infectious guitar chord lick that I like a lot. Even if the track, again, yeah, really subtle in nature for the most part, but it adds to this hypnotic and pretty cathartic bringing kind of lure to what it is they try to do. The same can be said of Melting and, to an extent, Billabong Valley. Billabong Valley being the only track with this female vocalist who, no matter how much research I do, I can't exactly find out who that specifically is. I think maybe when I get a CD and look up the liner notes, I'll figure it out. But with this track, it definitely brings a more foreboding and kind of intriguing instance of soft, loud, soft dynamic that is not common in the album as a whole. What you're getting in terms of songwriting is pretty progressive in its own right, and I just certainly dig it quite a bit. One of my favorite tracks on the album is Doom City, and that's because it sounds like really warped Black Sabbath. For real, there's this really ominous and really lo-fi bass groove on the track, and these really dum 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 that reminds me of like some really warped Black Sabbath from, say, like Paranoid or Master of Reality. The way Black Sabbath were able to fuse these pre-doom, pre-sludge metal-ish riffs and still find a way to make them semi-commercial-ish and pretty catchy in its own right. But by far my favorite of the singles off this album, as well as pretty much my favorite track on the whole album, is Nuclear Fusion. My body cannot say no to the little refrain that comes up in this track. Plus, I do like the really ominous vocal and guitar syncopation that's on this track, and it just glides really well all throughout, especially given how well it syncs in with the closing track, the title track on the album, Flying Microtonal Banana, which is pretty much an instrumental outro and pretty much closes out the whole project perfectly. There is literally just not much of anything negative I can say about this album as a whole. It's just really great throughout. I mean, yeah, there's some moments that pale in comparison to others, not like pale really badly or anything of that nature, but still, there are still some moments here and there that I'm like, oh yeah, I like this track a lot more than I like this track. I will definitely say though that the opening track, Rattlesnake, does take a while to really grip me as a listener. Plus the chorus on this track leaves a little more to be desired, given the fact that it's just rattlesnake, 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 rattlesnake. And the track Anoxia, while yeah, a really good track, there's no track on here that's not really good. It does leave a little more to be desired given its brevity in a sense. But yeah, this is without a doubt my favorite album of the month and is a really good contender of album of the year. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard further enhanced their canon of being one of the few rock bands in existence that aren't just prolific, but also still able to come out with interesting ideas and execute them incredibly well. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to the remaining albums that they are dropping next year. I'm not sure if it's going to be all micro-tuned albums throughout the course of each individual album that they drop. And as a matter of fact, I was kind of worried about this thing given how long it was since Not a God Infinity dropped. It dropped like late last April, but they have proved my skepticism wrong, and I am incredibly pleased with it. I'm definitely going to be diving more into the back catalog of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard because, without a doubt in my mind, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard have a platform, a moment, to become pretty much the most invigorating and pretty much one of the most fantastic rock bands we've had in a long, long while. This album is a plus 2.7 out of plus 3. If you're a fan of psychedelic rock, garage rock, experimental rock, any kind of rock music in general, cop this shit. You will not regret it at all. But if you give this album a listen, what'd you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? The CWD Music Review is here. Signing off.